Hey everyone, in today's video I want to describe to you how I design my units. Let's dive right into it. So the process has changed a bit since the beginning of the project. It used to be that I would just write down all kinds of random ideas. It's just a few. I have a lot more on paper actually. Random ideas for abilities or monsters, and I would just kind of see what made sense, and then we'll look at um, my emotions and decide where they will fit, and then just go for it, right? And that's how I actually created a bunch of these dudes. Well, the inception of them. Right now, things are a bit different. So what I do now is I look at all my current units, all the ones that I have fully defined. These are most of them, I guess. And I categorize them by trait, range, role, etc. And then I'll be looking at grouping them by range, for instance. I'll see how many I have of a certain type. Same goes for role, more or less. They can kind of feel what kind of a role they can more or less fulfill. And then also the traits themselves, the emotion themselves, how many I have of each emotion that I have designed. And after that, I start thinking of what is missing, basically. What should I use that hasn't been done yet, either by me or in general? Another thing that I do is I look at all the abilities of all my current units and see what kind of synergy am I missing. Or even better, I ask myself the question, okay, let's pick unit X. What would be beneficial to this unit? If this guy had some help, what would that be? So this way you can kind of start thinking of how to create synergies between all of my units, which is very important to me. For instance, if I realize that I have a creature that deals a lot of damage when it's low HP, then a synergy could possibly be, well, maybe a shielder, because that guy will allow the other unit to always be low HP and then still be protected so it doesn't die immediately. So once the choice has been made, I kind of start writing literally ideas down on paper. I will write down questions to myself. I'll be like, oh, maybe this is cool now, or maybe should we be doing this other thing, and I'll kind of play around with it for a little bit. After that, I proceed into actually making to writing down an initial first draft, I guess, of the skills of the unit. Once I have a first draft, I kind of sit on it for a bit. I will write down something, reason about it. I'll convince myself, first of all, that the idea is cool still, because the rule cool is always the most important for me. And then I'll kind of start reevaluating it after a bit with a bit of a fresh mind after a couple of days. Once the abilities have been kind of consolidated, I will also start experimenting a bit more with the visuals and decide more or less how it's really gonna look like. And this is the example of the last unit I've designed, and then I actually started implementing on stream, which is the summoner. I've only looked at the fear side of it, just to approach one thing at a time. This is a very good example of how, on the very first draft, well, the first couple of days of draft, I wrote down a certain set of abilities which sounded quite cool. There were summons, there were a bit of blood going on, even more summons. It made quite sense to me because, well, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a samurai unit because I realized I was missing one. But then I gave it a few days of rest, and then I came back to it, and I kind of looked at it with a bit more of a critical eye, and thinking about if it was really fulfilling and respecting the rules of the archetype that are dictated by the fear emotion, for instance. In this case, this wasn't really quite there just yet, I realized. The only weak link was, well, summons, which made it so they would play a bit more defensive, but wasn't quite where I wanted it to be. So I started analyzing, more or less. I took my reference of looking at what more or less makes a fear unit a fear unit, and these are some of the rules that I have written down in terms of it needs to have a drain ability, for instance, or maybe grave manipulation, HP manipulation, status alteration, etc. And then I picked which one made sense for this new unit, for instance, which was in this case HP manipulation. So I moved a few things around. I decided to remove a couple of summons that were felt a bit redundant and still not quite significant, and instead added a an HP manipulation mechanic that kind of ties in both the Summon the Souls, which now costs HP to be cast, and then other skills that would instead actually either protect you from this HP or use it in some way. They will make things more cohesive and interesting, really. So now I have, after this second, third draft, I have a unit that is pretty much finalized. It can be actually implemented. So this is it. Once everything is designed and I have a unit that looks like something, I will then proceed with creating the abilities in Unreal, creating any part of the code that I don't have for very specific needs, so on and so forth. You can follow all of this process as well live on my stream. I stream both on Twitch and here on YouTube. If you want to come along and see how the process goes, if you want to help, if you have any opinions, if you have any questions, I always love to reply to anyone that has any questions about anything I can answer about game design or game development in general, I guess. Yeah, so feel free to write down in the comments if you have any questions, or if you have a suggestion for a new unit, or if you would like to see something else for the next video, if you would like to see a different type of unit next time that you come by on stream. So thank you very much. Bye bye.